The Andromeda Strain wasn't just Robert Wise's science fiction thriller, it was Hollywood's most scientifically accurate nightmare, a $6.5 million gamble that suffocated live animals on camera for realism, convinced a skeptical director that female scientists could exist, and weaponized cutting-edge visual effects that didn't actually exist yet. Behind those haunting images of a dead town in the New Mexico desert lies a production history soaked in animal cruelty controversy, gender bias battles, and technological innovation pushed so far it required inventing entirely new filmmaking techniques. A monkey was rendered unconscious by carbon dioxide while cameras rolled. Robert Wise initially refused to believe audiences would accept a woman as a serious scientist. Douglas Trumbull created computerized visuals using cardboard and camera tricks. And when the dust settled in 1971, Wise had delivered a film so clinically authentic that real scientists still use it to teach planetary contamination protocols. Here are 10 dark facts about the Andromeda Strain, from the suffocating monkey that traumatized viewers to the gender swap that nearly didn't happen. And stick around for the bonus fact. It involves Michael Crichton meeting an unknown television director named Steven Spielberg during production. Let's enter the lab. Number 10. The monkey suffocation scene. The most disturbing sequence in the Andromeda Strain involves a rhesus monkey writhing in agony as it suffocates from exposure to the alien organism. Viewers watch the animal gasp for air, convulse violently, and collapse in what appears to be genuine death. The realism isn't accidental. The filmmakers actually suffocated the monkey. The production team constructed an airtight set and pumped it full of carbon dioxide. The monkey sat in a cage containing normal air. When the cage door opened, carbon dioxide flooded in, rendering the animal unconscious within seconds. Assistant director James Fargo stood just off camera wearing scuba gear and holding oxygen. The moment the monkey went limp, Fargo rushed in and resuscitated it. The entire procedure occurred under ASPCA supervision, which approved the method. The scene required only one take because the monkey revived too quickly. Watching closely, viewers can see a shadow moving toward the animal just as it collapses. That shadow is Fargo with the oxygen, captured on film, a frantic moment of production reality that slipped into the final cut. By modern standards, the procedure constitutes animal cruelty, regardless of ASPCA approval. The monkey clearly suffered while losing consciousness. Contemporary animal rights protocols would never permit such a scene. CGI now makes these moments possible without harming living creatures. But in 1971, realistic animal death meant actual animal suffering. The production prioritized authenticity over ethics, creating a sequence that continues to disturb viewers over 50 years later. The controversy persists in online forums where people debate whether such filmmaking methods were ever justified, even with veterinary oversight and immediate resuscitation. Number 9. Wise wanted eye candy instead. When screenwriter Nelson Giddings suggested changing the character of Dr. Peter Leavitt from male to female, director Robert Wise initially rejected the idea. His reason reveals the casual sexism embedded in 1970s Hollywood filmmaking. Wise pictured the female Dr. Leavitt as a largely decorative character reminiscent of Raquel Welch's character in the 1966 film Fantastic Voyage. Wise couldn't imagine a serious female scientist driving the plot with real agency. His default assumption positioned women as set decoration, not as legitimate scientific minds capable of carrying dramatic weight in a thriller about planetary contamination. The bias wasn't malicious. It was reflexive, the kind of unexamined assumption that shaped casting decisions across the industry. Gidding fought back. He explained his vision of Dr. Ruth Leavitt as a fully realized pathologist whose gender would be incidental to her scientific competence. Wise remained skeptical, so Giddings suggested they consult actual scientists. Wise polled multiple researchers about whether audiences would find a female clinical pathologist believable. The scientists responded with unanimous enthusiasm for the idea. Their endorsement convinced Wise to proceed with the gender swap. Kate Reid's performance as Dr. Ruth Leavitt eventually became what Wise called the most interesting character in the film. She brings sardonic wit, intellectual rigor, and moral conviction to a role that could have been reduced to tokenism in less capable hands. The incident exposes how close the Andromeda Strain came to featuring an all-male scientific team despite being made in 1971 years into the women's liberation movement. Without Giddings' persistence and the scientists' intervention, the film would have replicated the novel's gender homogeneity. Wise's eventual satisfaction with Reid's performance doesn't erase his initial resistance to the concept of a woman scientist as anything other than decoration. Number 8. The fake computer that revolutionized effects. The most impressive visual effect in the Andromeda Strain is also the most fraudulent. The film features a stunning computerized three-dimensional diagram of the underground wildfire laboratory, with each level rendered in transparent detail as the structure rotates on screen. Audiences in 1971 gasped at the advanced computer graphics. There was only one problem. The technology to create such imagery didn't exist. Visual effects supervisor Douglas Trumbull faced an impossible challenge. The script demanded a rotating 3D model of a 5-story cylindrical underground facility, but computers in 1971 couldn't generate such graphics. Trumbull needed to fake it using conventional filmmaking processes. His solution involved painstaking manual labor. The crew projected an image of each laboratory level onto individual pieces of cardboard. They moved each cardboard piece slowly while the camera rolled, creating a transparent exposure. After filming all 5 levels separately, they layered the shots over one another to produce the final 3D effect. The result looked like sophisticated computer rendering despite being created entirely through camera tricks and careful compositing. The sequence consumed a significant portion of the film's $250,000 special effects budget. That $250,000 represented nearly 4% of the total $6.5 million production cost. Universal Pictures invested heavily in visual authenticity, gambling that cutting-edge effects would distinguish the Andromeda Strain from cheaper science fiction competitors. Trumbull's fake computerization became a template for future effects work. His innovations on this film led directly to more famous assignments on Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Blade Runner, and Tree of Life. The wildfire laboratory diagram proved that audiences would accept photographic trickery as advanced technology if the execution was meticulous enough. Modern CGI traces its lineage back to these analog deceptions. Number 7. The unknown actor's strategy. The Andromeda Strain carries a $6.5 million budget, enormous for 1971. Universal Pictures expected significant returns on that investment, yet the film features no recognizable stars. The 4 lead scientists are played by Arthur Hill, James Olsen, Kate Reed, and David Wayne. In 1971, these names meant nothing to general audiences. Robert Wise made this choice deliberately. In behind-the-scenes interviews, he explains his reasoning. He would have had difficulty believing a major star like Gregory Peck as a scientist. Big-name actors carry too much celebrity baggage. Their presence on screen reminds audiences they're watching a performance rather than observing real scientists at work. Hill brought stage credibility but minimal film recognition. Olsen had appeared in a handful of movies without achieving stardom. Reed and Wayne possessed even less mainstream profile. Only George Mitchell, playing the elderly town drunk who survives the virus, had significant screen experience. But Mitchell worked almost exclusively in character parts, never leading roles. The unknown cast strategy served the film's quasi-documentary aesthetic. The Andromeda Strain presents itself as based on declassified government reports. The opening credits showcase close-ups of official documents, requisition forms for the wildfire compound construction, and security clearance authorizations. This framing device demands actors without recognizable faces who can disappear into their roles as credible scientists. But the strategy also limited box office potential. Star power drives ticket sales. A Gregory Peck or Paul Newman in the lead would have guaranteed larger opening weekend numbers. Wise sacrificed commercial appeal for artistic authenticity, betting that the story and effects would compensate for the absence of marquee names. The film earned $12.4 million domestically against its $6.5 million budget. A modest success, not the blockbuster Universal hoped for. Number 6. The electronic score nobody understood. Robert Wise wanted something radical for the film's music. He rejected traditional orchestral scoring entirely, instead hiring composer Gil Mellé, a pioneer in electronic and synthesized music. Mellé's assignment: create a soundscape that suggested alien contamination and laboratory sterility without using conventional instruments. Mellé approached the task like a scientist conducting research. He visited the Jet Propulsion Laboratory and recorded actual laboratory sounds for authenticity. He experimented with synthesizers, creating textures that audiences in 1971 had rarely encountered in theatrical films. His score incorporated electronic beeps, synthetic drones, and processed audio that enhanced the clinical atmosphere without calling attention to itself. The soundtrack album became a collector's item for its unusual presentation. Rather than a standard LP sleeve, the album featured 6 metallic paper flaps that unfolded to reveal production photos and the record itself. And the record wasn't circular. Mellé and the design team created a hexagonal vinyl disc with 8 tracks of score contained within the 6-sided shape. A red warning sticker cautioned, "Warning: due to the unusual shape of this record, only use manual control on record player, or needle damage will result." The hexagonal format meant the record couldn't be played on automatic turntables. Listeners had to manually lower the needle, and monitor its progress to prevent damage to their equipment. This physical oddness mirrored the score's sonic strangeness. Everything about the album challenged conventional expectations, from its unfolding packaging to its geometric vinyl to its alien electronic sound. Critical reception of Mellé's score divided sharply. Some reviewers praised its innovation and atmospheric effectiveness. Others found it cold, alienating, and insufficiently musical. The electronic approach influenced future science fiction scoring, particularly in films seeking clinical detachment rather than romantic sweep. But in 1971, many moviegoers simply didn't know how to process synthesized music that refused to comfort or uplift. Mellé's score remains polarizing over 50 years later. Number 5. Real labs, real equipment, real science. Universal Pictures demanded absolute authenticity for the laboratory sequences. Production designer Boris Levin and director Robert Wise refused to rely entirely on constructed sets. Instead, they shot crucial scenes in actual working research facilities using genuine scientific equipment. Dr. Ruth Levitt's laboratory scenes were filmed at a real Caltech research facility. The production installed additional set dressings to satisfy story requirements, but the core equipment belonged to an active scientific workspace. The spectrograph used on screen was functional, not a prop. Scientists working at Caltech during filming watched actors manipulate their actual research instruments. The operating room sequence required even more extreme measures. Wise, cinematographer Richard Klein, and the entire camera crew were required to scrub and don surgical gowns before entering the operating room at Pasadena's Huntington Hospital. They filmed in a genuine surgical environment with real medical equipment. Author Michael Crichton makes a cameo appearance in this sequence, visible at the far left of the frame. This commitment to authenticity extended beyond locations. The film's technical consultants included working microbiologists and planetary contamination specialists. Every scientific procedure depicted on screen was vetted for accuracy. When actors manipulate lab equipment, they follow actual protocols. When they discuss the organism's properties, the terminology is precise. Microbiologist Abigail Salyers later noted that the film raised genuine concerns with the public about the risks of interplanetary contamination. Scientists took the Andromeda Strain seriously because it portrayed scientific methodology with unusual rigor. The Infectious Diseases Society of America called it the most significant, scientifically accurate, and prototypic of all films of this killer virus genre. The insistence on real labs and real equipment significantly inflated production costs. Filming in working facilities required extensive coordination, scheduling around actual research activities, and liability considerations. But Wise believed the authenticity justified the expense and inconvenience. The result is a science fiction film that scientists themselves respect for its procedural accuracy. Number 4. The decontamination sequences that stopped the film. When the scientific team arrives at the underground wildfire facility, the film grinds to a complete halt. For nearly 20 minutes, viewers watch the 4 scientists undergo increasingly rigorous decontamination procedures as they descend through multiple underground levels. Each level features more extreme sanitation protocols, all depicted in meticulous detail. The sequences include full body scans, chemical showers, irradiation chambers, futuristic jet injector vaccinations, complete disrobing, fingerprint and palm print analysis, and voice recognition verification. Every step gets screen time. Every technological marvel is displayed and explained. The pacing becomes almost documentary, prioritizing procedural accuracy over narrative momentum. Critics complained then and now that these sequences feel tedious, killing the thriller's forward drive just as the story should be accelerating. Roger Ebert acknowledged the film's production design brilliance, but noted how the endless decontamination processes overwhelmed the human drama. Some viewers appreciated the scientific rigor. Others found the experience numbing, but Wise defended his choice. The decontamination isn't filler, it's the point. The Andromeda Strain argues that confronting an unknown alien organism requires exhaustive precautions and absolute sterility. The protocols aren't just background detail, they're the difference between controlled research and global catastrophe. By forcing audiences to experience the tedium of scientific safety measures, Wise emphasizes the seriousness of planetary contamination risks. The film also uses these sequences to explore the scientists as people. Stripped, naked, and processed through dehumanizing machines, the characters reveal vulnerabilities and resentments. The disrobing scene particularly challenged 1971 sensibilities, requiring actors to appear nude, albeit strategically shot to maintain the film's G rating. Modern streaming viewers, accustomed to rapid pacing, often struggle with these sequences. Online discussions debate whether Wise should have trimmed the decontamination material. but the deliberate slowness serves the film's clinical aesthetic. This isn't an action thriller, it's a procedural nightmare where every protocol matters and carelessness means extinction. Number 3. The rats nobody mentions. While controversy over the monkey scene dominated discussions, the film also depicts the death of multiple laboratory rats. These deaths receive less attention despite being equally problematic from an animal welfare perspective. The rats are shown convulsing and dying when exposed to the Andromeda organism, their deaths filmed in such explicit detail that it suggests they were not resuscitated. The production's behind-the-scenes materials extensively document the monkey scene, explaining the carbon dioxide procedure and ASPCA supervision, but they remain conspicuously silent about the rats. No making of featurettes address how those scenes were filmed. No interviews explain the methods used. The absence of documentation suggests the filmmakers recognized the ethical problems but chose not to draw attention to the likely outcome. Forum discussions among animal rights advocates note that rats are far more difficult to revive from asphyxiation than monkeys. The smaller animals have less resilient respiratory systems. While the monkey could be resuscitated within seconds, rats subjected to similar carbon dioxide exposure would likely suffer permanent damage or death. The silence in production materials raises uncomfortable questions about whether those rats survived filming. The cultural double standard becomes obvious in online debates. People express outrage over the monkey scene while barely mentioning the rats. The hierarchy of animal suffering prioritizes primates over rodents, suggesting that animal cruelty concerns depend partly on how much we anthropomorphize specific species. A likely dead rat generates less moral outcry than an unconscious monkey, even though both were subjected to distress for entertainment purposes. Modern viewers approaching the Andromeda Strain should understand that the animal sequences weren't simulated. Real creatures experienced real suffering to create those moments. The ASPCA supervision of the monkey scene provides some ethical cover, though contemporary animal welfare standards would reject the methods. But the rat deaths remain unexplained, undefended, and unacknowledged by the production team. Number 2. The town with 20 people. The film's fictional town of Piedmont, New Mexico doesn't exist. For location shooting, the production took over Shafter, Texas, a near ghost town with a population of exactly 20 residents in 1971. The entire community became a film set for several weeks as cameras captured the eerie silence of a town where everyone has died from alien contamination. Shafter's tiny population made it ideal for depicting mass death without requiring extensive set construction or crowd control. The production didn't need to evacuate residents or shut down businesses. With only 20 people living there, Shafter already resembled an abandoned settlement. Its weathered buildings and empty streets provided instant apocalyptic atmosphere. By 2025, Shafter's population has declined even further, dipping as low as 11 residents. The town survives primarily as a tourist attraction for ghost town enthusiasts and film location scouts. Its abandoned silver mines draw visitors interested in Old West history. Movie fans visit to see where the Andromeda Strain was filmed, walking the same streets that appear in the opening sequences showing Piedmont's dead inhabitants. The choice of such an isolated, dying community adds melancholy to the film's apocalyptic vision. Shafter wasn't just playing a doomed town. It was a doomed town. The production's presence provided brief economic activity for a community already fading from existence. After the cameras left, Shafter returned to its slow decline toward complete abandonment. The location shooting also occurred in Alamogordo, New Mexico, and Ocotillo Wells, California for additional desert sequences. But Shafter provides the film's most memorable imagery. A dusty western town where bodies lie in streets and homes, victims of an invisible killer from space. The authenticity of Shafter's genuine desolation enhances the horror of that vision. Number 1. Universal bought rights for $250,000. Before production began, before Robert Wise was attached, before any casting decisions were made, Universal Pictures purchased film rights to Michael Crichton's novel for $250,000 in 1969. The price was extraordinary for a first-time novelist publishing under his own name. Crichton had written 6 novels before the Andromeda Strain, but all appeared under pseudonyms. This was his debut as Michael Crichton, the name that would eventually become synonymous with techno-thrillers. Universal's massive rights purchase bet on an unproven commercial property from a writer without an established track record under his own identity. The $250,000 rights purchase represented nearly 4% of the eventual $6.5 million production budget. That financial commitment before a single frame was shot demonstrates how seriously Universal took the property. Studios don't spend that kind of money on literary rights unless they envision major commercial returns. The investment paid off modestly. The Andromeda Strain earned $12.4 million domestically, nearly doubling its budget before international and home video revenue. The film became the 16th highest grossing release of 1971, respectable but not spectacular. It established Crichton as a viable source of film material, leading eventually to adaptations of Westworld, The Great Train Robbery, Congo, and most lucratively, Jurassic Park. But in 1969, that future success was far from guaranteed. Universal's $250,000 bet could have failed spectacularly if audiences rejected the film's clinical pacing and scientific rigor. The studio took a calculated risk on source material that prioritized procedural accuracy over traditional entertainment values. The moderate commercial success validated the gamble without delivering the blockbuster profits Universal hoped for. Bonus fact: Michael Crichton met Steven Spielberg during production. Michael Crichton toured Universal Studios during the Andromeda Strain production in 1971. The studio assigned a young television director under contract to escort Crichton around the lot. That director was Steven Spielberg, who had just signed a 7-year television deal with Universal after his work on Night Gallery and Marcus Welby, MD. The two men were roughly the same age. Crichton was 28, Spielberg was 24. Both were ambitious, brilliant, and on the verge of transforming their respective fields. Their encounter was brief and professional. Neither could have predicted their future collaboration would create one of the highest-grossing films of all time. 20 years later, Spielberg bought the rights to Crichton's novel Jurassic Park and directed the 1993 adaptation. The film earned over $900 million worldwide, becoming one of the most successful movies ever made. Spielberg and Crichton later created the television series ER together based on Crichton's experiences as a physician. The show ran for 15 seasons and won over 100 Emmy Awards. But in 1971, these achievements lay decades in the future. Spielberg was an unknown television director performing studio escort duty. Crichton was a novelist experiencing his first film adaptation. Their meeting was unremarkable at the time, just another mundane interaction during a promotional visit. The connection between the Andromeda Strain and Jurassic Park runs deeper than shared creative personnel. Both films explore humanity's dangerous hubris when confronting forces beyond our control. Both feature scientists who believe they can contain and study phenomena that ultimately prove too volatile for human management. The Andromeda Strain warns about alien organisms. Jurassic Park warns about genetic engineering. Different threats, same underlying message. The 1971 encounter between Crichton and Spielberg on the Universal lot represents one of those moments that only becomes significant in retrospect. Two young artists crossed paths while working on a science fiction thriller that would establish both their careers. Neither knew they would reunite 2 decades later to create cinema history. The Andromeda Strain failed to become the blockbuster Universal hoped for in 1971 because audiences wanted escapism, not clinical procedurals about planetary contamination protocols. But time has vindicated its scientific rigor. The film that bored some critics now serves as a teaching tool for actual scientists. The monkey scene that traumatized viewers sparked important conversations about animal welfare in filmmaking. The female scientist that Wise initially resisted became the most interesting character in the film. The film reminds us that authenticity often requires uncomfortable compromises, that progressive representation faces resistance even from well-meaning creators, and that sometimes the most influential works succeed by refusing to entertain conventionally. The Andromeda Strain prioritized accuracy over excitement and built a legacy that transcends its modest box office returns.